Hi everyone. Today we're talking about chapters 5, 6, and 7. Chapter 5 was about the character. I felt like this chapter was a really good reminder about how we need to really do our research into the detail of the characters. I think if we as directors do our research and we dive into each of those character elements, physically, emotionally, mentally, where the characters from, where they're going to, and their goals, I think we can help our actors relate. We can help our actors really dive into who their characters are as well, through coaching and analysis with them. I kind of feel like sometimes I don't have a full grasp of the character until after we do our table read, because even hearing the actor speak the role, it even awakens my senses. Then I think, oh, I didn't even catch that part of it. And then we do some analysis with the actors, and I think that's really productive. I think the more we do table reading and analysis of the character as we go through, I spent several days doing that, and I think it's super important with our actors, especially young teenagers. Another part he talked about was that I love that we need to really give attention even to the small character roles. Students sometimes are disappointed when they don't get those big lead parts, but they get a smaller role. And really those smaller roles are just as significant. The saying, there are no small parts, only small actors. And we even tell our students that even at 13, 14, and they kind of learn to take that role on and to make it as big as they possibly can for themselves as an actor. Chapter 6 was about thought. And I thought this was an interesting chapter because I really like how he talked about the checks and balances of making sure that our thought process of how the subject, the theme, and the protagonist's goal need to be in direct correlation with what the dramatic question is, and that if it's not, we need to go back and rethink. And he kind of gave some ways of doing that, which I thought were really helpful. Another thing he talked about was researching the playwright, which technically I'd never really even thought about doing before. With doing the Jungle Book, I actually did research on Rudyard Kipling. I've done many of his pieces before, like short stories, but never really researched his background and where he came from. And that really opened my eyes to oh, he wrote this part of the mother wolf because his mother was not with him at boarding school, and his parents sent him away, and he was very attached to his mother, and why he wrote her the way he did. And it made a lot of connection and sense to me as a director. The last chapter was on diction. I always thought diction was the vocal quality of what an actor had. I never really looked at it as the language of the piece, of the story itself. And when I kept reading through this chapter, I kept going back to a moment when I went to Broadway and I saw Hadestown, and how the actor's voice completely changes things. I got to see Patrick Page as Hades. If you've ever seen the show, it's amazing. His voice is so deep. It makes you I was chilled every time I heard him. But every time he spoke or he sang, we could completely get the emotion of what the character was feeling, what he wanted, and we even felt his feelings and subtext beneath what he was saying. And that's another thing that Cutrone talks about, is subtext and teaching that. So I really looked at diction in a totally different way reading this chapter. But I like the idea that we dive into the language, the subtext of it. It's really hard teaching subtext to 14-year-olds because they're mostly worried about trying just to memorize their lines. But I really think as they continue to grow as actors, they will learn, oh, I'm saying this line, but what I'm really feeling or my emotions is really below the line. And I need to show that in my quality of my voice and in my facial expressions. And I think the more that we can connect with each of those dialogue pieces with those actors, I think they'll be much more successful. But I really enjoyed these 3 chapters. I really thought it kind of brought home those elements of character and thought and diction together as to what we need to do as directors to help our actors become successful while they're on the stage. Okay, that's all I have. Have a good week. Bye.